Well, so this is, I think, the second to last week of meetings. So next week, I think, is our last meeting.
Woo.
Crazy.
Exciting.
Yeah.
It's flown by, right?
So today, what we'll do is we'll go through demos, then we have a presentation on communication, and then after that we'll review the issues again, the issue for this week, and then that's it. So for the demos today, does somebody want to start, since it's everyone's together? Who would like to run the demo?
Yeah. I kind of have it pulled up, and then we can all kind of chime in. That
Sounds
works.
good.
Let me pull up the right page, and then I'll share. Share screen. Can you enable sharing screen? Oh, sorry. And thank you.
All set.
Thanks. Share. Cool. This is what we have so far. Yeah. I'm just real quick. I'll talk about kind of what we did on, was it Wednesday? And then if anyone wants to chime in, can. So on Wednesday we met, all four of us, and we looked at the issue and kind of thought through like some of the different views. And Sandy had also looked at some of the past cohorts and their projects so that we can get some inspiration, and she came up with an awesome color palette as well for us, and name. But yeah, so we kind of made these wireframes, and we're still kind of messing around with the colors. But we have, you know, the welcome page for empty list page with items, and then add item page. So yeah. Anyone want to share like some other things we talked about, like frameworks, or some other thoughts?
So one other thing that we thought to add, which wasn't really included anywhere else, was the user's token, just to like have it showing so that it's easier for them to remember if they want to come back to it later, because before you had to like go into the console to see what your list token was, which didn't really make sense for like the non-engineering user. And then Sandy came up with this amazing name. Let us know.
I love that name. It's so cute.
Yep. And then for the frameworks we were thinking of, I saw that the group used Sweet Alert, and I thought that was a really cool, easy way to incorporate alerts with this cool animation on it. So I think that'd be really cool to use. And then for the buttons and we decided to use Material UI as a framework to incorporate into our project.
Yeah, we want to like ask about how to design the components. Will we design as a pair, or will we design like individually different components?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think Lewis brought up also a good point, a good suggestion for us, that we could do like a reusable button component, since they're all kind of similar shape. So we can try to incorporate that, and maybe for the inputs, since they would be similar as well. And then we have like the item component, which is already a thing. Yeah, so I think it would be cool if we did that. If we had like a button component and components for those other things. So yeah. We haven't split up the work yet, but we kind of know, yeah, just like all the things that we've mentioned, like we know kind of what we need to do. But I think organizing, once we organize and know like how we're going to do it or when and all that, then I think we'll be able to get it done. So.
Very cool. This looks great. I love all the colors. I love the like art and the name. This looks really solid.
Thanks. Oh.
I'm excited to use this for my next
Yeah.
shopping excursion.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah, great job, everybody.
And if you need help setting up the framework and stuff, you can just let us know. This is like the last week. We'll probably be a little more active on Slack because you'll probably have a lot of stuff to work on. So we'll try to respond quickly.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So for this week, we have a demo on communication for devs. Even though it's the last week, you've all been doing a great job with communication. So these are probably just going to reinforce what you already know, which is great. So we're going to be talking about a few things. We'll go through some documentation tips. We will do a refresher on pull requests and then talk about comments and code. So as you figured out during this cohort, communication is key. Without it, people could be stepping on each other. The quality of the code will go down just because people aren't discussing what they want to do or best practices, and it makes the project unorganized. Not just with the code, but also the organization of the whole project scope or management or issues. It doesn't really feel like a team without communication. So it's important to make that a priority when working with other people. So the first item we'll go through is documentation. It's pretty important to have documentation for, I try to have documentation just for everything, because as you've probably seen in other projects you've worked on, if you don't touch it for like a month or two, you totally forget what you're doing. And also you might not be the only person working on a project. So if you want to express how someone should use something or why something was done, putting it in a documentation file that everyone can reference helps with that, so they don't have to come to you. And it's helpful at work too. Like if you're working on a project and for some reason you leave, or if someone is working on something and they leave the company and you have no idea what this piece of code does, it becomes very difficult to manage it or maintain it. So documentation helps with that as well. Along with someone leaving, it's also good for onboarding. That makes it much faster. That way people can get set up without having to ask as many questions. They can read through it and understand, along with a mentor to help them get onboarded. So documentation just overall empowers the team to grow and to be effective and work efficiently. So some quick tips for documentation. You always want to assume that the person reading it knows the least about the project. So trying not to omit anything that you might think is common knowledge for the project. Making sure pieces are verbose and you're covering all the bases, so that someone with little or no experience with whatever that project is can get up and running without too many questions. And then you can also optimize it for the person who needs a quick reference. So formatting would be super helpful with this. Things like creating a table of contents at the top so people can quickly skim to certain areas that they need help with. And also just clearly describing sections, what they are for, so people understand where they need to go and what different sections are about. So just to show you an example, this is a documentation example for React Router, which you've been using in this project. A lot of great documentation, has a quick start guide, which is super helpful. This one here, all you have to do is 2 lines of code and you're pretty much, this creates React, and then all you have to do is install it, and it's pretty clear how to use the project with this quick start guide. It even shows example code here if you want to use it. But for someone who already knows all this and knows how to use React Router, and they just want to figure out a certain thing, like I need to figure out how to test. Testing with React Router is pretty difficult, so I just want to go to this testing document. I just search test, and it's an option here in the guides, and this gives detailed explanation about testing, which is super helpful. And React Router has a ton of documentation for all their APIs, their hooks, each of their components and their properties. So it's super detailed, and anyone can go here and find what they're looking for. The next piece of communication would be for pull requests. You've all been doing pull requests already, and you have been doing a great job with comments and images, which I've really appreciated. Pull requests are super helpful for the descriptions in the pull requests are helpful for giving reviewers context on your code, understanding what it does, what it fixes, what it adds, and all those sorts of things, so that someone can look at the pull request and clearly understand what it's for. And a big part of interviewing and also collaboration is walking through your code and talking through it. So having a robust PR description will help you remember what you worked on. When you start working on bigger projects, you'll have a lot of pull request history. If you want to find a specific thing, like for instance, at my company, if someone makes a pull request and it gets deployed to production, and for some reason it breaks production, we know exactly how to find that pull request through the description. And each of our pull requests has a ticket number on it, so it's easy to understand where the pull request comes from, and you can easily revert that. As opposed to if you just have a pull request with just a vague description like updated payments page, that's pretty vague. Like, what did you do on the payments page? That's a pretty big part of the project. So having something a little bit more clear will give people better context. So you've all been doing screenshots, which is awesome. You can also use GIFs in pull requests. You can do videos. For instance, if you're testing it and something's broken, you can send a video to a comment or something, and someone can quickly see how their PR affects the code. Adding resources and links to the code. GitHub has a lot of that, which we've seen already. If you just you can link code selections. So I'll just show an example. Here. So I can, so if you look here, this code, if I, for example, I want to add a comment here, I can say this code is weird. But if I also wanted to link to a particular file, say I want to link to this file, I can copy a link to the file and put it in here. Or maybe not. It can show a preview of code if you put it in here. And if I click add comment, it'll add it. But you can select code and you can add it in comments so people can understand what you're referring to. Here would be a great PR description. This is from TCL-28. So I think our PR templates have sections. So we have one for types of changes. We have acceptance criteria, related issues, and a description. Having the types of changes here in the front is makes it pretty clear what this PR adds to the project. And the description makes it pretty clear what this PR does. It also provides testing steps, which is really nice and helpful for people who actually want to test what's been written. And also PRs, it's better to have smaller ones, which I think we've already gone through before, because it's easier to review and the descriptions can be more concise. If you change too much in a single PR, it becomes very difficult to write a description for that PR. And then finally, comments and code is really helpful for when you're working on something in the code that might not be ready for a PR, or if you're working on something that's a little bit confusing, like a very specific piece of regex, which no one understands how to work with it. Having a comment above it saying like this validates a UK email address or UK phone number is really helpful. So yeah, it gives your team more context while they're tracing through code. It's great if your code is self-documenting. So for instance, naming functions based on what they do, or naming variables more clearly. For instance, if you have a Boolean variable, I like to prefix it with the word is. So like is active, is user. That way it's very clear that this is a Boolean. And there's other ones too, like for functions, naming a function like post user data instead of just update user data, or like a update username or post username. Having like that prefix based on what the API is going to do is helpful. So it's very clear and self-documenting. So for writing comments, it's great to focus on why the code is written rather than what the code does. So adding a comment saying, if this is red, right below an if statement that says if this equals red is not very helpful because it's just redundant. But if you have a piece of code, like for instance, this here is a detailed explanation for this particular conditional. It's explaining why this is happening, which is not something you can do in code. This here as well, adding context to what this collapsible accordion does and why you need to add these cases here. Because it could be confusing without this comment, like why is this -1? What does this mean? So adding comment such as these are very helpful for this types of thing. And also, if you look through GitHub, there's a ton of open source projects, and due to the nature of open source, they need to be super well documented because they have tons of contributors. So you can check out like React's documentation, you can check out Redux, even Gatsby has awesome documentation because it's open source. So those are really great examples of documentations that's been thoroughly reviewed and written out so that other people can work and contribute on a project no matter the size of the group. So yeah, I'd like to just, we can start a discussion now. Does anyone have an experience with documentation or writing documentation? Anything with comments or anything they want to discuss?
I want to ask about like when creating personal projects, is it good to create like branches, pull requests for your own project?
If it's your project, it's like if you're just working on it by yourself.
Yeah, like show to employers like I can do it. I don't know.
Yeah, you can do it for the practice of it.
Yeah, I do for like my own personal website, mostly because it's like, I'll think, oh, this would be a cool thing to add. And I'll like get partway into it and not finish it. So I'll like have separate branches for, you know, like all the blog posts that I've started and not finished, or like different features that I wanted to add. So it's, for me, it's less about showing it to employers and more just about like the logistics of having a lot of ideas and wanting to be able to like bounce back and forth between what I'm working on. But yeah, I definitely like any pull request that I open, it's like I approve it, I merge it.
I think it can be helpful too if you're like working on a project that has different features, and you don't want to like mess up the main branch trying to get something else to work. And
Yeah,
so you
totally.
can just do that. Yeah.
Megan and Lewis, how much time do you actually spend writing documentation in your jobs?
I spend a lot of time on it, but that's because I'm like in charge of our documentation. So yeah, that's definitely something that I spend a lot of time thinking about, especially as like, you know, new features that the engineering team is working on or is getting released. I'm like helping plan out like what kinds of docs do we think would be helpful for this? Like what kinds of tasks do we expect users to be able to do with this new feature? And then like make sure that there's a use case documented. Because to me, it kind of feels like, you know, like if a tree falls and nobody hears it, like if you release a new feature, but it's not documented, like, does anybody know that it's there and that they can use it?
Yeah, same thing for me. I do a lot of writing, but I'm also trying to organize setting up shared libraries for our code bases, which is a new feature. So writing documentation for that to make sure people know how to use it and how to create their own shared libraries is helpful because it can be complicated.
Do you all write your documentation just like in like MD files on GitHub, or I'm wondering what tools you use? I guess it would make sense to maybe have it in the repository. I don't know.
Yeah, there's this idea of like docs as code, which is a movement to get people to like have the documentation for your stuff in the repo next to, maybe not right next to the code for the implementation, but like at least in the same repo, as opposed to in like a separate wiki or, you know, content management system or something like that. And the idea there is that if you keep your documentation in the actual code base where engineers are working, it's easier for them to like actually write the docs. And they'll be more likely to do it if it already fits into the workflows that they're used to. So like at Gatsby, we have like our open source framework, and in that same framework, there's like a top level docs directory that has a bunch of, some of them are markdown files and some of them are MDX files, because then you can like, with MDX, you can import React components into your markdown, which is cool if you want to do something that's like a little more interactive.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all in that same repo.
Mine's a little bit different because so we use Jira for ticket management, and so we also use Confluence for documentation because
Nice.
it's not just our engineers that need it, but also our project managers and other leads that are not like tech savvy. So we have all our documentation there for projects and like design documentation, things like that. And we also use another tool for API documentation called Stoplight, which basically just allows you to document API endpoints and mock them as well, which is really nice.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Took some notes. Do you all, and this is for like anyone, write a lot of comments for yourself? Like, I'm trying to code something like either before you actually try to solve the problem, or, yeah, or just to like review what you just did.
Yeah, Lucy, you want to go?
Yeah, I do. It's like, for example, like temporary comments, sort of like pseudocode. If I'm
Yeah.
working on like a complex thing, I'll write like a bunch of like lines of comments of what I actually want it to do, and then go step by step to actually doing it. But then I'll delete the comments afterwards unless it's like something complex that needs explanation.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. And then And then like before the PR gets merged, I do like a pass of, okay, what of these things am I not going to remember why I made this decision in like 2 weeks, 2 months from now? And then like those are where I go back and sort of flesh out a more detailed comment that'll hopefully be more useful for people jumping into that part of the code base without context.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. What other questions do folks have?
What is Confluence exactly? It's
Oh,
from,
Confluence?
yeah.
It's just like a it's just a documentation thing, like page. It's sort of like Google Docs, but it's organized. So pretty much the same
It's like
thing.
a wiki
Yeah.
tool. Is it owned by Atlassian?
Yeah, it's one of their tools.
Okay.
Does like Trello or Jira boards or something like that kind of fit into this conversation? I guess that's kind of different. Yeah.
No, I think that's similar though. At my last job, we used the Jira tickets. So like the actual story cards as the place where we would log all of the conversation, like any back and forth about decisions that we were making, or like if we had to do some research to like dig into the code base and figure out why something was happening, we would use the actual story as a placeholder, as like the container for all of that conversation, so that in the future, when you're trying to look back on like, oh, we had to do this one thing one time and we had to look into this, there's a place that that all that information is captured, that all of the like back and forth.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's like a lot of different places that you can store information. And then if it's like a bigger, like something that you know that you're going to want to come back to later, I feel like that's when I would split it out into like a Confluence doc or a separate like markdown file. That's something that's a little bit more coherent, I guess, than the sort of organic back and forth conversation.
Okay.
Another piece I don't think was mentioned was releases. So let me take a look at TypeScripts. So release is another way to do great documentation. Like TypeScript just released 4.4.2 2 days ago, and it has this link to a release document, which is too long for me to go through, but it's so detailed that like it's thousands of lines. But it has also a quick TL. It doesn't have a TL, but it has like explanation for what it fixed issues for query, fixed issues, and then it has links to downloads. So releases are also another great way to add documentation to your code.
Cool. Is that as far as like the format of that, how is that any different than just like a normal like a release? I guess just talks through what like new features or new changes.
Yeah, and specific, I think releases also allow you to, like, if I wanted to download an older version of TypeScript, I can go to a different version here, like this one, and I can download this version. So it allows you to separate your deployments so people can download different versions.
Okay. And that's made possible through like Git, probably, or I guess on their website they probably have.
It doesn't have to be. Yeah, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
GitHub. You can probably do this in other tools too.
Yeah. I have one more small question. So like, I guess more like starting out, if there's one of these tools or a tool, you know, or something, maybe a specific feature of GitHub or something that you weren't as familiar with starting out that you wish you had gotten more practice in, what would that be? I guess as far as like you know, a tool in GitHub or like a documentation tool or some kind of project management tool. I guess, yeah.
Yeah, one thing which I tried playing around with was the difference between an issue or a label and a milestone, or a milestone and a project. I didn't really understand the difference between them. So I've been trying to play around with it and making projects in my own repositories and seeing what they did. Like for instance, a project board is pretty much just like a regular like board with columns, just like we have in our projects.
Yeah.
But a milestone actually has deadlines, which is pretty cool. And you can,
Nice.
and while you can add multiple issues to a project, you can only add, while you can add one issue to multiple projects, you can only add one issue to one milestone. So it's very specific.
Okay.
But that was like one thing which was I didn't understand too much. And I don't really use milestones at all, but
Yeah, for us at work, we use like a different project management tool, but for us, the equivalent of milestones would be something called an epic. So it's like an epic is related to a specific feature of like, oh, we're going to improve the experience for this particular page of our site. And so all of the stories, all the issues that are related to that particular thing, that particular feature would go into that epic. But yeah, I guess the project, I don't know like when the project then is like more of the workflow of like what are the stages that this work goes through of like working on it and then reviewing it and then merging it. Whereas the epic is more about, like the milestone is more about grouping related issues.
Okay.
So that you can sort of like see, I don't know,
The
see like the
trajectory.
related. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
yeah, that's more, this is more getting into like project management and like
Yeah.
one example is like our company just launched in UK. So we had an epic called like UK launch. And then I had a story to add cookie consent for GDPR. And then under that story, I had different tasks for that. So it's becomes more and more granular.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for asking.
I guess part of being an engineer is a little bit of project management. Does anyone have any other questions they want to go over? Cool. So was I supposed to go over issues or do you want to do it, Megan?
Well, I'm wondering now if, because like we just have this one issue, would this be a helpful time to go through and do some of the work of like breaking out the work you've identified into different stories?
I think that would be helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
just
sure.
so we can, yeah.
Cool. Who wants to drive?
Does anyone want to?
Yeah, Issa, you already drove, so I can drive.
Okay.
Okay, let me open it up.
What are the terms driver and
Navigator.
backseat?
So we're all navigators now.
Navigator. Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
So what were the sort of things that you all had already talked about having like different stories for? It sounded like there was one that was about like having a button component. Are there other things? Lisa might be freezing.
Yeah, you see you're freezing.
Yeah, you sound like a robot.
Oh,
Oh, there you
Am
go. Yeah, now you're
I-
not frozen
okay.
anymore.
okay. That's funny because I could hear you.
Oh,
Saying Yeah. So yeah, I think button component, maybe also header component, because I think we're gonna have the same header on multiple pages.
Okay.
So I don't know. Would that be like as a developer, or would it be like as a user? I want to see like, I don't know how.
we can also just like write down the ideas for now, just so that we have like all
Okay.
of the buckets, and then we can go back and flesh
Okay.
out each of them.
Um,
Actually, I wonder if that would be easier to do from the project view. So
yeah.
that, can you create
Yeah.
issues from in there?
You can make a new project. You can make like a
You can do
project
this.
called like, or you can do that.
Oh,
too.
nice. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Oh, sweet.
We'll say, so we'll just call it like button component for now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Nice.
And you should also add a issue for someone to install the framework.
Oh, nice.
What are we
Stapler
using?
and material UI.
Yeah.
This could also be two different ones too, if they're not like implicitly linked, so that if you
Yeah.
wanted to split up the work, then like one person could do one person could do another.
I'll make it too.
Sure. I think there already is an issue for having the tokens visible.
Let's see.
Or maybe I,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
If you click that, and then you click on projects on the right,
Ah.
you can just add it to the shopping list issues.
Oh, sweet.
I wish there
Oh,
was a
that's
way
good to
to make
know.
it be like, just add all of the new issues to this.
Just like select them all and then like add it or
Right.
something.
Just like, ugh, that's the part that always trips me up.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So now that's here. I'll move it up.
Nice.
Um,
Header
have
component.
some-
Did you say that one?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You'll probably want someone to export the assets from Figma. And probably be,
Mm.
Mm. Okay. Is that just like grabbing the styling that's associated with each asset or item or UI element?
I was just thinking like the
then-
images.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We have some basic styling for the items right now, but I think we'll want to like finalize that styling, you know, like add margins or padding or maybe change the colors.
Was it single item?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you need to do something similar too for the other pages, like the other views, the add item view?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I
the
think-
radio.
Yeah. If I
Frequency. Is that what it was?
frequency buttons,
Yeah.
right? We're gonna try and make them like those blocks if we can.
Yeah.
Cool.
We have also like filter items and search
Yeah.
and delete.
So like the
The input.
input styling.
Do you want to make another component for that too, the same way that you have like a button component? If you have like an input component, then you
Yeah,
can.
that's the idea.
This would be interesting. I think, is it harder like some like the input component, for example, well, not the input component itself, maybe, but like state, right, where we want to keep track of what the user types in. And so any tips, I guess, for trying to make that component versatile so that you can use it for, or maybe it's not that complex in this case, since it's not like we have multiple input fields or like a big form, it's just one input. So
Yeah, one thing that you can do is like if each input is tracking its own state itself, you can like pass in from whatever renders that input, you can pass in like a handle update function or something that will like also update the like form level state.
makes sense. Yeah, so just bring in like props from where it's rendered, and then yeah, we'll figure that out when we do it. So thank you, though. That's helpful. Let's see. So we have so empty shopping list page. It's pretty much the same. We just want to have like an image there, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Style.
Okay. Big, but
Just remember, if you're going to use a framework, you might have some limitations into how you can style things.
Yeah. We could also add like custom CSS, right? In addition.
Yeah, you can, yeah.
The other thing, Kelsey, so right now we look at the bottom for list. Looking at the wireframe we have now, it's a little bit different. So we'll have to see if we can make things be buttons or something. So like navigation buttons or
okay. Yeah. So do we want like the footer now to just be a navigation button, or do we want to get rid of the footer altogether and just like add a button on each of those views?
I'm wondering if anyone has thoughts on this, but I'm wondering if we can just like have that component be like a navigation component, possibly, that renders these buttons, and then those buttons, like if you click on it, it just takes you to another page.
Yeah,
like
I would like
maybe-
it on top. Yeah, I feel like I would like it on top because I feel like on the bottom for the add item, that's like a lot of buttons. If we also include like the frequency. And then on the bottom would be like add item view list. I feel like that's too many buttons on the page. So maybe on the top of the navigation.
So just have it like carry over on each page, like kind of like a fixed position kind of thing, or so we could do that. I think
So
having a like, sorry, go ahead.
So like have the navigation kind of in the header above our logo.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful to pull up the Figma right now and then just make the updates to the designs so that it's like all, the Figma would be like the source of truth then?
Yeah. Does anyone have
Here, let me drop
a link?
it one in the Zoom.
Cool.
Okay. So instead, we would have just like the navigation links up here.
But
So-
the page will be so empty. We don't have so many things.
Yeah, versus like the way we have it now, where we just have them below.
I get what Sandy's saying, Sandy, what you're saying about the add item page, because it's just like button, 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 button. But I think maybe the benefit of having like a navigation component or something is that we could place it if we wanted to somewhere different on that page. Possibly we could do that.
Or we can just make these look more distinct. So like maybe like these buttons are going to be like the way they look now, rounded or whatever. And then these could just be, I don't know, like squares or
Maybe
rectangles or some, you know.
something similar to the items list page, maybe like similar shape.
Yeah, yeah. Or we could like make them smaller and put them all in one row or something like that.
Yeah. What do you think, Sandy? Is that just want to make sure we get input from them.
Yeah, I think that works too.
Yeah. And I think the page like this obviously looks relatively small. The page itself is going to be so big that I think there's going to be a lot of space between this stuff and these two buttons.
Yeah. Yep. Yes. And some of the other examples that we saw from earlier this week, they had like, you know, a narrow kind of where everything was like and like background or something like that. So that way, if we wanted to, we could like maintain similar styling from, you know, a desktop, like a laptop size to mobile. Just have like added margin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll have some flexibility. And as we go along, you know, we can experiment with things too.
Mhm.
So.
Okay. So we'd say just like add navigation buttons
Sure. Navigation buttons.
and remove links.
Yeah. And what about like overall app styling, background color, fonts,
Hmm.
font sizing? So I feel like maybe that can be grouped one, like general, I don't know what you call that, but
Typography.
typography, yeah,
Yeah, that's like the global styles. Maybe.
global styles. And we could like incorporate some of the colors from the palette we have and
Mhm.
stuff there.
That you might need to create a theme for Material UI. And I think Material UI has documentation on how to update the theme for your custom colors.
Okay.
Cool. I think that's. Do we? So we want to import or install the framework suite alert, but I guess we want to actually implement that. Pop-ups for adding an item and deleting an item. Were those the ones that we wanted to use that for?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Maybe this ticket should also be the one that's in charge of installing, just so that there's not like one card that's installing it, but not actually doing anything with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of, yeah.
And then actually similarly with the Material UI stuff, you could add that into the global styles, maybe. Like maybe that's the first piece.
Yeah.
Then we have two less issues.
Yeah.
It frees up some space. Yeah.
And that'll be good then too, because if you do that story before the like component level ones, then you'll already have your color palette set up, and hopefully that'll make those ones easier.
Yeah.
Are there any other dependencies that you see in here of like the order in which things have to happen? Just trying to shift from like story making mode now to
Yeah.
like prioritizing mode.
So
Yeah.
I think the material UI one will probably be the first thing everyone needs to complete
Mhm.
first, and then because that sort of blocks everything else. But other than that, I think everything, like anything else, I think is not blocked. Just the material UI and the design ones.
yeah, let's think. So the header needs the Figma stuff. Oops. And then I guess the navigation buttons. You kind of, I don't know that you need the button component first. Maybe you do.
Yeah. I mean, we'll probably have some styling and logic. Well, the styling, the button component, I think will be, yeah, there's styling and like logic we'll have to do, I guess, for the navigation buttons. I think that's fine.
Yeah. Then, yeah, then I think the rest is
Mhm.
fine.
Maybe that
They're
the one
similar.
that's an issue already, the like installing or making the token visible, that might be one that
Yeah.
you can play at the same time as the material UI story. I'm just like trying to think of like which of these things can be played in parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also kind of part of the header.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe I'll just put it next to it. So it's
Makes sense.
in mind.
Would it make
Okay.
sense to combine those into one ticket? Or maybe
Yeah.
just add a note to the,
Yeah. Oh, add a note to the actual issue because that one's all nice. Okay.
either way, yeah.
Um,
Oh, you might be editing Issa's comment on the issue
oh,
instead of the actual description. You might have to go like into the issue for full details. Or maybe
I think that is the description.
Oh,
It's
is it?
just-
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
yeah. This will say like display users token in the header. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I can get rid of the, well, I guess we still need to do the header component.
Yeah. That's so. Small item. Styling.
Mhm.
Cool.
Nice.
Then one last thing we can do is if you go to the issues tab, do you want to just clean up the issues that we have there or make sure they're assigned? Like, so we've already organized the token being displayed, so that one's fine. How
Yeah.
about the next one? I want to have a way to sort the inactive items.
Oh,
Do you still want to work on that?
I would say, I mean, unless anyone wants to like take that on like solo, I would say like if we have more time at the end, but that one might take more like time and logic. So I wouldn't prioritize it, but if anyone wants to.
And what about the next one? So that is an object instead of a string.
Yeah. I just, sorry, I'm just like, I don't know these issues. I didn't tell anyone about it. Yeah, no, I think right now, because the tokens in the database are just, they're not like, it's not like an object and then token and then what the token is. It's just like whatever. So if we want to do this, I think I created a branch and did that, but it's not like something super important. it's basically just like the same way that you add an item to Firestore is you kind of use that same code, just refactor it so you do it for the token, but it's, yeah, that's all. So again, not,
Yeah, that's fine.
yeah,
It's just good to review them. So
yeah.
Yeah.
um,
And then this Firebase one, I remember I added at the very beginning.
yeah, I left a comment on that and how to do it, but it's probably gonna be out of scope for this project.
Yeah, yeah. So I think similarly, unless someone like wants to take it on their own, it's not something we need to prioritize.
Cool.
Cool.
And for these notes here, if you want to make them issues, you can just click on the three dots and you can convert them to an issue. So whoever works on them can make an issue for themselves.
And then like assign themselves to it or something.
Yeah, yeah. You
Cool.
can assign yourself
That's
to
cool.
it, to get after that.
Sweet.
Awesome.
So yeah, we can do that. And I think that's really helpful though, that we have it like all broken up. How do we, before we hop off, so we're split up in pairs. Do we want to do the pairs or do we just want to do like individually? Or I guess we can just like stay, how is it? Communicate well, so that we know who's working on what. And then if someone wants to help with something, you know, be like, oh, like I'll add myself to that so we can.
Yeah, do you
Yeah.
want to each like call it? It seems like the first couple of stories might be useful to pair on just because there's at least the material UI one that blocks a bunch of other ones. So either one person can take that and start on it like today, tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah. Any volunteers?
Who wants to learn material UI?
Yeah, I can install. Just for the global styles, did we decide like font size exactly, line height, such things? Did we decide all those global things?
No, we did not. But
You could also just like make a call for now and just
Yeah.
set them to something, and then we can always make adjustments later on.
Yeah.
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 Okay, I'm assigning Julia.
I think that one would be good to work on as a pair. So who would want to work with Julia on that?
I can volunteer. Tribute. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay. And so then I guess Sandy and I can do Sweet Alert to start.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Nice.
Okay.
And then hopefully we can get those two merged in like by Monday or something. That way you can have the rest of the week to do all the other tickets.
yeah. Cool.
Well done.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks everyone. Mentors for helping us,
Yeah.
Kelsey for driving, and
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks
job
for helping
organizing.
us break them out.
Right.
That was
Team.
overwhelming.
I want to ask something about like transitions. Do you have any preference, like how to add cool effects to the styling? Do you use any framework for that?
Oh, for cool effects.
Yeah, like
I
transition.
don't know. Honestly, my design skills are not great. So I've never made
Same.
anything that fancy.
I can search my.
There's like a transition library. I think it's like I forget what it's called. I can share it with. It's like I think it's just called React Router Transition.
Oh, there you go.
Well, that's nice.
But you can do that like at the end to like for
Yeah,
final
I'll
touches.
just add one. Add transitions. Okay, I'll go at the very bottom.
Cool. Does
Okay.
anyone else have any other questions? No. Awesome.
Great.
Great job, everyone.
Let's go team.
Make sure to communicate in Slack and we'll be
Yeah.
available if you need help.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Good. Thank
Everyone-
you.
Have a great
Bye,
day,
have a
everyone.
good
Thank
weekend.
you.
See ya.
Bye.